Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Talking Landscape Photography. We've got a fascinating show tonight on Norfolk Island. Very, very glad that you can join us. And we've got a brilliant guest, Ian Rolfe, with us tonight. Should be, well, I absolutely have always wanted to know about Norfolk Island. It looks like a fantastic photography destination. So I'm sure we'll get all of the lowdown on how it works. And we've also got Paul on the line. Nick can't make it tonight because of work commitments, unfortunately. Paulie, where are you?
I'm in a car park at a big wave surf spot on the east coast. just getting the water out of my ears. I'm having a little bit of break, and a little bit of a powwow, and a little bit of a fresh space because I sort of went straight into the new year on a big 10-day, really intensive filming, an interview and shooting project, and then straight into my exhibition, and I just haven't really had a break. But news on that front, we've actually just extended the exhibition 2 weeks to the 25th of February.
Oh, great.
So that's pretty exciting. And on Friday, I had an awesome interview with ABC Radio about the exhibition, which I'll put up on the Sky Dreaming website, and I posted on my Facebook page a couple of days ago. So, that's pretty exciting. And I've just been asked to do another exhibition literally the same day that this one finishes for 3 weeks. So,
oh, really? Is it the same? Is it still Sky Dreaming somewhere else? Or
it's in the Tasman Peninsula at a beautiful little sort of side space gallery that a friend of mine runs. And really nice time of year and pretty low key, but pretty fun. So, which is kind of actually why I chose to do this exhibition the way I have, because as I said last week in the exhibition show, or whichever one it was, I've done all these high key ones at high end galleries with big money involved, and it's not that relaxing. It can be fun at times, but there's a bit of financial pressure in it. I'm really enjoying just almost like grassroots, just celebrating for love and doing it in community spaces and places, and finding that super enjoyable and really soul filling. So that's really enjoyable. And part of the reason I'm up the coast is I'm here with a good friend of mine, Davis Walker, who I actually we're sort of brainstorming a number of trips this year that I'm in continuation of my kind of Men with Heart work. And we're actually doing a co-gender camp, a 12-day sort of deep sort of personal development course between men and women, which is going to be quite challenging and beautiful at the same time to document and film that and turn those into film, sort of mini film projects. And so, getting back on track with my breeding work that Luke and I had a meeting with about today. So bit of as per usual, I'm trying to squeeze everything into every day possible.
You always try to do it to the max, don't you?
I was up at 6 this morning trying to shoot. Then went for a surf, and then I met a travel writer and spent 2 hours sort of brainstorming ideas with her and Davis, and then I went mountain biking, and then I went for another surf, and now then I had a work meeting in the middle, and now I'm on the show. So that's today.
Yeah, there you go. No, it sounds like a pretty good break that you're having, and certainly hard earned after getting those exhibitions ready, the exhibition ready. And I'm sure there was a lot of burning the midnight oil to get that going. So you do need to recharge the battery once you go through that sort of thing.
I had some news I wasn't as excited about. It's the first time in 8 years I haven't made the top 100 and the top 101 international landscape photography of the year. I've got in at 7 or 8 years in a row, I think. And then the irony was I was literally sitting next to Scott Patelli and Carolyn Tang while they took their photos that did get in. So it's just like, oh, what about mine? So one behind me, I shot with Caroline actually on the Tiwi Islands, and she got a beautiful one as we're journeying between Darwin on the way up to the Tiwi Islands, and she got another one. Oh, two from up that way actually.
Yeah, and Scott had most of his of the Gulf, wasn't it? So
and Scott got his in from a trip that we did together in the Gulf Carpentaria in July last year, and then Tom Putt got 4 in, which is as much as anyone. So massive congrats to Tom.
Well, I mean, it depends to if it's the top 100 or the top 202. So they did extend it. So I know our guest Ben Mays from the past, a good buddy of mine, he actually managed to get 5 in the top 202, but I think only one of them was actually in the top 100 if you look at it from that perspective.
I haven't seen the 202. I looked online and went on the website and just found the top 101. Where do you find the 202?
Well, the 202 is on their website too, but this is actually something, and we're happy to announce that next week we're actually going to be doing a show on the results of the International Landscape Photographer of the Year competition, and we're going to be really honoured to actually be joined by Peter Eastway, who was one of the show founders, and also Matt Palmer,
one of the judges as well,
a legendary judge as well. So should be a great show. It's not really critiquing the images so much as just understanding or looking at all of the amazing shots and what works with them, and just admiring them, really. So it should be a really nice show to go through. And we certainly can't be too critical with Peter on the show, because he doesn't want his judges to get too offended. It should be awesome just to go through those amazing images. There's just so much
it will be a great show.
Display. Yeah, absolutely.
And Matt and Peter, two exceptionally skilled and experienced judges, and I've had a fair crack myself. So we're going to have a pretty strong panel of people to engage with it. And it's, like we did with the Natural Landscape Awards, it was amazing to get Alex Nail and Tim Parkin on, the actual founders. Yeah. And I was kind of surprised that they were really open to going through and critiquing the images as well. In fact, they seemed to really enjoy it. So Peter's seen it all, so I wouldn't feel like we need to be too precious around Peter. He's been in the game too long. But it'd be interesting to see. He might be in a different position that he did actually judge it himself. But it's definitely attracts some of the most high caliber, particularly creative landscape style photography. It's kind of not quite the complete opposite spectrum from Natural Landscape Awards, but it kind of is in a way.
Well, I guess there probably are some of the entries are pretty straight up shots. I saw, I'm sure Scott's, for example, are probably pretty straight up to how he shot them and that kind of thing. So I guess from that perspective, it's not the complete opposite, because there are some very little edited shots on there. But yes, there's also some on the other end of the spectrum there where there's been a lot of work done.
Really highly polished images, so we say. It was super refined processing done on them, whether it's just on a really, really fine minor level or on a major, because you pretty much there's no limit really in that competition about how far you can go with that.
And another competition that closed just recently too was the Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year, which I think was on Friday last week or the week before.
Yeah, but, I had 3 seconds to go. I put a couple in it.
Yeah, managed to get 5 in too, so we'll see how we go. I haven't had very much luck with it lately, so I guess coming up, Will Patino's done really well in it, so we'll be able to chat to him about that comp as well, but in the future. What else is I was just going to mention that I've been using been very lucky from Sony to have lent me the A7 Mark IV, and I've been putting that through its paces. I have to send it back in a few days, but certainly have enjoyed getting that out to shoot some astrophotography I got up at 2 a.m. The Milky Way's in a pretty terrible position early in the morning at the moment. It's in a good position, it's just a terrible time of the morning. Right. That was really fantastic, and so I'm pretty keen to share, or at least see the comparison between that camera and then also the A7 Mark III, which is the current one I'm using. So that's what I've been up to, and a few other things. I'm working on a major project that I'm hoping to launch very, very soon. So we'll see how we go.
It's a big one. I can't wait, Lucky.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where all of the other work just gets in the way, and I'm setting up workshops and other client jobs and things like that, and it just gets in the way of all your personal work. So it's quite frustrating that way, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So yeah, I'll hopefully have some time before I get away in the future. But we should also ask our esteemed guest Ian, what have you been able to get out on many shoots or anything like that lately?
Well, good evening, Luke, and good evening, Paul. I've not been as busy as Paul. He sounds kind of frenetic. I'm getting older. My wife keeps reminding me of that constantly. I have got out a little bit. We've done a couple of workshops, one a couple of months ago in South Gippsland, and one just the last weekend for TM Technologies. OM Technologies. And I shot quite extensively up in the mountains and the high country through the early December when all those storms were coming through. I had a lot of images that I was able to shoot for the High Country Cattlemen's Association. And so I've kept my hand in, the workshops, of course, have been cancelled due to COVID for the last couple of years, and we keep putting things off. And so we've got a pretty busy schedule coming up later this year and into next year. So I'm enjoying quite a bit of time around home, seeing. We've just had a new addition to the family. We've now got 4 grandchildren. We had a lovely little girl born to my youngest son recently. We're off to England next week to see my older daughter and her children, our older 2 grandchildren over there, and we'll be in the UK for about 3 months. So we've been planning all that, doing a few personal projects and keeping my hand in with my stock photography, which, you know, I love doing and have been doing for many, many years.
Well, we're lucky to get you on the show then before you head over to the UK. And
that's right.
Yeah, and I guess it's good that everything's sort of opening up, because it must have been quite a period of time since you've actually seen your family over there.
It is. My wife, it's nearly 3 years. Yeah. For me, it's just on 2. Ewan and I finished a workshop in Arctic Norway, March 2 years back, which is nearly two years. And I always call into England on the way home and spend about 9 days with my grandchildren and my daughter, so that I can see them usually a couple of times a year, in the winter and also in the summer. So it's been 2 years for me. So it's sort of chafing at the bit a little bit to get there and enjoy some really quality time with them. And I'll have a fair bit of time to shoot some gorgeous late winter landscapes and seascapes, because they live in Dorset, which is a beautiful part of England. Oh, yeah. And I can never get enough of that.
Yeah, it's 2.5 years since I've been home, Ian, and I'm chafing at the bit as well. New Zealand's like Fort Knox. It's so difficult to get into.
It is hard. England's a bit slack at the moment, so we're getting in there, you know.
Yeah.
We've got to do a fast test when we arrive, and unfortunately we booked our tickets and then realised a couple of days later that if we'd waited another 2 days, we wouldn't even have to do the fast test. But never mind, it's pretty easy. I've had them sent to my daughter's place. We'll just do that. They'll come back negative, hopefully, and we can get on with life, you know.
Well, they're pretty advanced over there in terms of the pandemic too, so that should make things a bit easier, whereas somewhere like New Zealand is obviously sort of just kind of getting started in some ways in terms of the larger rate of infections. So yes, interesting. And so tonight you've prepared a bit of a presentation for us, and also we'll hear a little bit about, I guess, you introduce yourself in a way, and all of the amazing work that you do, because I mean, it's not just Norfolk Island that you take workshop guests to. You travel all around the world, and you've been doing this for a very long time, and I've got some really fascinating, no doubt, insights onto other places around the world, and particularly one of your favorite places is certainly one of mine, which is Flinders Island, and Ian's actually done an absolutely magnificent book on Flinders Island, and maybe tell us a little bit about that, seeing as Flinders is so special.
I will, Luke. Thank you. So if I just share the screen, I can start my program.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. There we go.
Perfect.
So tonight I want to share with everyone a little bit of my photographic career, which spans about 47 years. Wow. And it all started way back in the film days. I only shot film because that's all there was. So high quality film slides, and very quickly realised that the stock market was an excellent place to make quite a considerable living. And I started in the Pacific Islands. So it's basically from that, and you can see with just some of the front covers of brochures that I did in the Pacific region, and doing other corporate work back then in the 70s and in the early 80s, that I was constantly going back to Norfolk Island and the other Pacific Islands, and the travel companies would pay me to go there, and they'd want to give me a business class ticket, and I used to send that back and get 2 economy tickets so I could take my assistant, which was my wife. and we'd end up shooting some resorts. We'd end up shooting all these beautiful photographs for the travel industry. So it was quite a lucrative trade back then, because it was way before digital, and it was a whole different ball game. It was a different kind of world. So Norfolk Island is close to my heart and has been for a long time, and it sort of comes full circle. So I start off talking to you about this, and then I end up telling you a lot more about Norfolk Island tonight, which is the main thrust of our talk. From the brochure work, I realised that I could get into the market by writing about the places that I'd been to. It's one thing to go to an island or a destination and shoot it and do the best job you can with the slides that you shot there. And it's something else to actually write a story about it. So in the end, after many, many years, I've now written probably about 120 different articles from all over the world. And of course, when you go back to the 80s, the 70s and 80s, there were so many magazines. I know in Britain alone, there was 24 different photography magazines. I think there were 7 or 8 here in Australia. And of course, the editors are basically lazy animals. And if you send them something, if you send them a great set of images and a well thought out piece, not too long, edited properly, they just put it in, and you got so much per page. So I often had articles that were getting reprinted in different magazines, or if they brought out an annual, they'd pop in an article that you'd already been paid for once. So it was quite lucrative. And it's funny that when we're talking about that, it's the same with all the travel companies. Of course, you would get copies made of your best slides, and you would send the copies up to whoever asked for them. All the picture editors would ask for certain images. The joke was they'd ask for nearly the same ones every year, and then they'd pay you again for the same images. So you often saw your work a multitude of times over many years, which as long as you were being paid for it. And of course, the scale of pay was a lot better than it is now, because they realized there was a lot more work. One of the funny stories with regard to picture editors is they wanted to know your secrets. For instance, with the South Pacific, it was all about the blue skies and the aqua waters, and you can't do anything with slide film. You shoot what you've got, and you've only got 3 or 4 stops at the most of resolving power with slide film, and especially Velvia, which I ended up using more than even Kodachrome. And so I never told them the secret, but one of my favorite secrets was having a Koken polarizer filter. And also I used to slot that in with a 2-stop blue grad from Koken. And so you could only polarize the sky or the sea. So what I did was I used to polarize the water and then drop in this 2-stop blue grad. And of course, the whole thing went saturated, and they couldn't work it out because they'd been buying images and one or the other was saturated. So I was able to get both that done. And that was one of the things that I did. There were quite a few little tricks that I did and never told them about. What was lovely back then in the early days too was that Kodak and Fuji were the 2 main suppliers of good quality slide film. And if they knew you were going somewhere, or you just rang up the office and got the manager, you would get a box of 40 rolls sent out to you. As long as you mentioned, I used Kodachrome 64 on this trip, and, tweaked it up to ISO 80, or I used Fuji Velvia and knocked the ISO up a little bit on that. So as long as you just said a little bit about the company, they were happy to supply you film. So you never paid for film, which was quite expensive.
Yeah.
After many, sorry, Paul.
I remember Velvia well. That was my foray into landscape photography with, sometimes one stop was just blow the thing out of proportion, but the saturation was superb. The grain quality of the film was magnificent. And I remember when they brought out the 50 Velvia as well, everyone got a little bit excited. So that was the tail end booster of the tranny sort of days. And most of the big Tasmanian landscape photographers, large format photographers like Rob Blakers and Chris Bell, they were all using Velvia and in large format. So
Yes, they were.
Goodness knows how much that cost. But
A fortune. Look, you could, even back then, you know, and $1 was worth $1. It cost you nearly $1 by the time you got it, you know, the E6, by the time you got it processed.
Yeah.
And I often I used to pick out the best ones and put the frames around them, not all of them. But it's interesting. Things have changed so much. I mean, it's exciting times to see in your lifetime the way the film industry and, you know, photography has changed so much. Velvia was lovely because it had beautiful blacks. You know, the end result of writing so many articles and shooting different places in such beautiful light, I decided to bring out a book, and my first book was called Lightscape. And basically I talked about the 4 different kinds of light that were my favorite: the backlight, the front light, and the dramatic light, and storm light. And so all the images in this first book of mine were actually all film images. They were some of my favorites that I'd shot over the years. And that was a very successful book, and was out in the marketplace for many years. And I still go back to that fondly because all the images are just beautiful. And when I realized that they're all shot on film, it's quite a bit of work because, you know, even though you had to scan them and perhaps finish them a little bit in Photoshop, you had what you shot was what you got. You couldn't muck around with them too much. Now, the mainstay of historically, I have an art background, education in art, and we had for many years, we ran a business called Mentone Art Centre, which not only did framing, but we sold many first edition limited prints and paintings, and also photography. The building wasn't big enough. So after a few years, with me wanting to sell a bit of my own work, we decided to move one suburb up to Cheltenham. And so for many years, we ran a business called Cheltenham Custom Framing. And I employed a man there, a wonderful man named John, who had a background in art. He was an archivist. There was nothing he couldn't repair, whether it was oil or watercolor. He could take the oil off a canvas and put it back. He could do anything. And so we had this beautiful framing business where we specialized in memorabilia. And to supplement that, to keep that business really, really busy, I actually learned to do photo restoration. I attended some courses that Adobe had been running. They sent a couple of their experts out here to Australia, and we were able to do some courses with them just on photo retouching and restoration. And I ended up having clients all over the world sending their work to me to do before the real digital age set in, and then it started to get real cheap in India, and I couldn't compete with that. So this was a very successful business. I had a gallery attached to this as well, and sold many, many, limited edition prints of my work. And of course, we could do the framing. We could suggest the best type of framing for the particular image that our client chose. However, my passion in life, apart from stock photography and doing my personal photography, is the photographic workshops. And I have a long history with these. And it really harks back to how I feel about teaching. And it's the absolute love of seeing people progress and mature with their camera and how they take images. So that learning process that you experience in your own life often reflects deeply when you look at clients who come on successive workshops and improve their craft, improve their skill, and get more and more passionate about the beautiful topic of photography. And I actually had a gold club where once they got to 15 workshops, they got looked after really well. So it was quite amazing. Now, I just put this up for a little bit of a laugh. This is 35 years apart. On the left there, you can see me trudging around as a young guy. My son, my oldest boy, always reckons I look like the guy that was on Hawaii, that Hawaii show, whatever, with the big glasses and that, and that's a more recent one of me up in the Arctic region.
Magnum PI.
Magnum PI, that's
there
it.
There you go. I remember that show.
You got it, Paul. You got it. So I've kept a happy, smiling face through over 1,000 clients and 160 workshops now that I've done over that period of time, and I've still got a smile on my face. So it can't be all bad. It's really, really a lovely thing to do in your life. So here's a picture from one of my first workshops down at the bottom there in Victoria, just a small 3-day workshop away. And up there, you'll probably see a couple of guys. There's Gary Boz and there's Shelton Muller, a couple of great photographers, commercial photographers. Gary still runs a business in Mansfield. He's a mountain photographer and does weddings. Shelton's still a commercial photographer in Melbourne, and that's us, about 30 odd years back. Again, having a small workshop with a group of guys. So this is how we started, doing small workshops, encouraging the craft, and we're all out there with film. And, you really counted your shots, like, how many are we going to take of this sunset, or how many are we going to take of this river, and so on. It was quite an interesting time for all of us. I really started in earnest with workshops to King Island. The Bass Strait Islands are out of this world. I mean, you've got it all down there, guys, like really. But the King Island one, I was invited to go there by a lovely guy by the name of Ian Johnson, who actually runs the King Island Travel Centre, and he runs a holiday wilderness lodge there. He's got this fantastic Ocker bus, and he invited me down. He said, look, I'd like you to run a couple of workshops down here and see how it goes. Well, 25 workshops later, I was doing 4 a year for him. Absolutely amazing. Here's the Ocker. Now, can you imagine this? 7.5 ton. He's actually got it off the beach.
Off the ground.
4 wheels off the ground. The guy was incredible. Along with his business partner, Lucinda, these guys were amazing. They would take care of everything for me. I would just send down a list of clients that were coming on my next trip. We tried to do one every season. So we had one in the winter, spring, autumn, and summer. And of course, things change down there on the island. Like the winter time is, if I go to the next slide, that's the winter. It's the roaring 40s. And there's 300 shipwreck sites around the island, more than any other place on the globe. And you can still find bits. The one up here on the top, the one in the middle is actually one of the worst shipwrecks where 300 people perished, and there's a big sand mound on the beach, and that's where they're all buried. But you can still find bits of metal when you're walking around that site. So it doesn't matter whether you go to the east or the west side of the island, the wind's going to come round at some point in the day, and it's going to give you these amazing climatic conditions, which are fantastic for photography. So I had, as I said, doing 4 a year, and I did that for about 7 or 8 years. So I think it was more than 25. Here's some more storms. Look at that. The King Island is just an amazing island. It's got so much going for it, and people don't realize that it's so close to Tassie and Victoria. You can go down there and grab some amazing photography. I haven't actually got around to
talk to you about that, Ian, because it's definitely been a place on my list for a long time. And
yeah, well,
get over
if you want to go down, mate, I'll come down with you, and we'll go and get a couple of
There's an offer. Brilliant. No, I'd love that. No, it's definitely it's a bit of a crime. I haven't been there yet, I think.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, as you can see from these images. Now, it's not all about storms. If you get a great day, there's a golf course up here now, which is in the top 50 golf links in the world. This is at Cape Wickham. In the spring, the native cicala, or what we call the pigface, comes, or Carpa brotus, isn't it? Carpa brotus, the native pigface comes out in a myriad of colours, and some parts of the island are beautiful. This one was a beautiful little posse of mine, and I never missed shooting the tallest lighthouse in the world, built totally of local granite. It is just amazing. Stands 40 odd meters.
I didn't realize it's the
high.
tallest in the world. There you go.
Yeah, it's the tallest in the world.
Wow.
And it is absolutely stunning. Actually, it's the tallest in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
It's the tallest in Australia, tallest in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
So it's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, King Island also has some secret spots. Here's what it's like in the summer. Now, I haven't told anyone where this is. You really shouldn't go on your own. It's tiger snake country, and you need someone to actually keep a lookout for tiger snakes. Why the native pig face just is so beautiful here. This is about 7 acres. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That is the shearwaters, the mutton birds, they nest, and the little darlings don't even disturb the pig face. They actually burrow underneath, but it's their guano that creates this fertilizer. And of course, the colors, I mean, that's unreal, isn't it?
That's got to be one of the biggest sort of areas of that, going around. Really, I haven't seen anything like that. I've never seen that area big. Yeah. And is it sort of around your sort of October, November's sort of scenario?
No, that's February.
Oh, really? There you go. Okay. Wow.
So the pig face will come out before Christmas, and there's a few places on the island I know that you'll always get it. I'm only very quickly running through all this tonight, but I've got a lot of beautiful images just showing the native flowers on King Island.
We'll have to do an episode on King Island and get you back on. That'd be amazing. Yeah.
I've got enough for a whole night, mate. Don't worry.
Oh, beautiful. Now, consider it done. Fantastic.
Okay.
This place.
Yeah.
Okay, so we move on now to the other island, which I love, the Furneaux group of islands, and Flinders is the main one. I've seen about 5 of them. I find Flinders Island absolutely magnificent. It's about the same size as King Island, so you're roughly looking at 68 to 70 k's long and about 35 to 38 kilometres wide. Flinders Island itself has 50 beaches, and I defy anyone to find a footprint on any of them when you go there to photograph.
Yeah.
No one visits them. And, when you want those beautiful low tide shots and you go, oh, someone's walked through this already. Well, on Flinders Island, that's not the case. You get the place to yourself. It is a delightful, delightful island. Now, I had the fortuitous account of being able to find someone on the island who not only was a wonderful host, but he was a chef, and he organised my workshops down there on land content, and we had a minibus and so I was flying groups down there a couple of times a year. So I probably ended up doing 14 or 15 workshops on Flinders as well. I made this one a day longer because there was so much more, and it was harder to get into places like you guys have been into Eglet Beach, So, by the time you walk them in there and walk them out, you've lost half a day. So and even going up in the morning to Wireless Hill, when I first started going there, I could get the bus up, but the track gets worse and worse. And then, of course, there's the cord. You've been down into the cord. I've got a shot of that in a moment.
Yeah,
it says 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
But you recognise this on the what they call the Blue Rock area.
Yep.
And it's actually looking west, and it's just glorious in the morning because the sun comes in sort of on your shoulder. Absolutely delightful. And then, of course, you've got Trousers Point, which is the one there on the left-hand side. And when the sun bursts out in the morning over Mount Strzelecki and the ranges there, it's just delightful there on Fotheringay Beach. Trousers Point would have to be one of the most photogenic spots. It is just lovely.
It's definitely a favourite of mine. Yeah.
So here's Fotheringay Beach at low tide, and what's amazing about Flinders Island is it's granite, and then in certain spots you've got this calcified sort of like sandstone in little spots. And when the tide goes out, you get all these incredible shapes of the sandstone, and they almost come together on the same beach. Sawyer's Bay is another one that's like that. Here's the cord. Now, to get down to that's a 4-wheel drive.
Oh, we know that as the docks.
Yeah, it's called
docks.
The docks. It is the docks, yeah. And around the other side is where they do all the mountain climbing. I'm
Yes.
getting mixed up with my islands now.
Yeah.
I've been so many places. It's, sometimes
right. Yeah, it's a bit of a, you definitely want to have the right kind of vehicle getting down there, depending on, like, I've seen it quite good, and then other times it gets washed out and you can struggle to get down in there. But yeah.
Hi, Lukey. And, often I take a group down there and they go, hey, that sign says 4-wheel drive. And I said, well, I've got 4 wheels. We're right. And then I said, there's 9 of you in the bus, so you can help push me out. But I used to struggle up there sometimes. But these all take time when you've got a workshop group, and you just can't rush anything. So that resulted, of course, after 14 workshops there and being down there on my own to do other little things. I'd often sometimes stay a couple of extra days to get some of the places I wanted and the light that I wanted. I brought out my second book, which is the Flinders Island book. It was a huge success. I was talking to Luke and Paul before the show, and I was telling them just how amazing this was. The local government gave me a grant to get the book going, which was lovely of them. There's the president there. She introduced me at the book launch. Ken did this amazing cordon bleu book launch with food and everything. And that was on the Friday night. And then on the Saturday, we had the local agricultural show. And between the book launch and the agricultural show, more than half my entire edition was gone. So it didn't take long for a couple of years later, the book was sold out. I also produced a set of beautiful postcards, which were sold in all the outlets down there. And apparently they were a rage overseas in Europe. People were sort of asking Flinders Island if they could send them postcards. I remember getting calls quite a lot. Could you send down another edition of your postcards? Because we have some people buy 68 of them, and I think, my goodness me, they're doing swapsies or what,
A lot of relatives to send postcards to.
Yes. Apparently postcard collecting is huge in Europe. So there you go. Oh. Anyway, this book was absolutely wonderful to get out there. And it was my passion of the light. And of course, you guys know 40 degrees south, you can't go wrong, can you, with the light? So that was Flinders Island. Now, between running the smaller workshops, I was doing some other ones. I was running big photographic tours, not workshops so much as tours into the USA. And I did this for a number of years. These were massive. Huge amount of organisation, and my wife was behind me on this one. We also engaged the services of Peter Walton and his wife. I'm sure you've heard of Peter Walton. He was he's been a friend for a long, long time. And I said to Peter, I'm going to need someone just to sit in the bus and help the clients out, because I had to do all the logistics and liaise with the bus driver and make sure we got to the next spot and blah, blah, blah. And so Peter was wonderful. He'd do one-on-one tutoring. And then at night, we'd run some Photoshop skill nights or just do some talks on the landscape and composition and lighting and so forth. But these were wonderful. And we used to take up to 24, sometimes 26 people at a time. And they were so popular, 3.5 weeks all the way together. And the camaraderie between all these photographers, mainly amateurs, was just lovely. I loved it, being able to show people the American West, the American Southwest. We went into Colorado, we did Utah, we did the grand tours down through into Arizona, and we also went up through California, into Wyoming. We did Yellowstone, Yosemite, and places like that. So it was really very successful for me, combined with my custom framing and my gallery in Cheltenham, being able to get away because I had one full-time employee, John, who was absolutely marvellous. We could go and do these for 3.5 weeks, and we sort of incorporated this to be our annual holiday as well. And I was doing this when the children were older. I had one at nearly finished high school and one was at uni, and the older two had already gone. So this was a really good time for us, and it was a fantastic opportunity to show a lot of people that had been on my smaller workshops just how wonderful a long trip was, to actually slow down, to anticipate the next stop, to have time to process your images and then come back and see if you can improve at the next stop and so forth. So that's them on that road, that famous road, you know, where the Forrest Gump runs out and then he says, "I'm going home now." Well, that's that spot,
down in
right?
Monument
So
Valley.
yeah. So
Yeah,
Monument Valley.
I found the selfie spot, had a crack. Well, mine was a little bit more exciting. I ended up almost crash landing on a microlight on that highway. Instead, it was a little more excited than just sitting there with the tourist taking selfies.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed at people. As you can see, there's a lady standing in the bus, and there's probably another couple on the bus that didn't want to get off. We had ones that were that eager to get off, and then we had other ones that thought lunch was more important. Or I had one guy he used to come on trips, and then he'd say, "What's here?" And I'd say, "Just get out and look, mate. You'll see what's here." You know, these amazing scenes. And you know, Monument Valley, the Grand Canyon, Zion National Park. We're up there in Glacier National Park, in the canyon lands of Utah. Absolutely stunning times together. And some of these, I just run through a few. What really motivated me was the light, of course. Even at the famous destinations, you need the light and the time of year. Being in the Arches National Park in the winter is absolutely stunning, as is the Grand Canyon. Being in Yosemite when in May, when the spring has come, there's plenty of water in the Merced and in the falls. And being up in the Grand Tetons at the beginning of spring as well, with the color, but also the mist and the beautiful alpenglow in the mountains. This one's down in Colorado. This is the Maroon Bells, just out of Aspen. Absolutely lovely place. This is the Grand Tetons. This is Oxbow Bend. And some of these are film shots that I took many, many years ago, and I'm just running through a couple of my favorite spots and some of my all-time favorite images as well. This one's down in Sedona in Arizona. And of course, we've got the beautiful Bryce Canyon, which is delightful. So there's Bryce Canyon in the various seasons. And the rock formation.
I got a funny story from Bryce Canyon, because I think American Southwest is one of the most incredible places on Earth. And I've been to all of those spots except for I haven't been up to Glacier yet. But I remember coming in for the crack of dawn into Bryce, which you were just showing, and I heard opera playing. I was like, "There's no one here. What's going on?" And it turned out there was a full operatic genius down there practicing her performance for an actual show that she was running. And I had the most eerily beautiful experience running around Bryce Canyon with a fresh dusting of snow and pure opera playing. And I ended up coming around the corner and actually finding her after about half an hour. It was the most bizarre and beautiful landscape photography experience.
It would be, Paul. Like you can see down in the valley there on the screen now, you can walk down through there and come up the other side. You can see the tracks going down on either side. Incredible acoustics, absolutely stunning place. And Paul's right. The Southwest, we did this particular workshop, which starts and finishes in Las Vegas, and it goes through all the national parks. It goes through Snow Canyon, it goes through Zion National Park, Bryce, and then through the Escalante, across to Moab, Canyonlands, Arches, then down into Sedona. We also Canyon de Chelly, and then up into the Grand Canyon, and then back round through Route 66 back to Vegas. 3.5 weeks.
Wow!
I did it a few times with the groups, and they loved it. I mean, to arrive at the Grand Canyon up in the top right there, and see the snow comes the day you get there is an incredible sight, you know. And down the bottom right is Canyon de Chelly, which is in Arizona, and to get snow down in that is amazing too. And then the ones on the left are Arches National Park. And then, of course, I took people into the slot canyons, paid for an extra hour so that they had 2 hours
And
to
where were
wander
most
through.
of your clients from? Were they Australian or mixed?
A bit of a mixture, mostly Australian on the American ones. I have had Americans on the American ones, which is amazing, because they hadn't seen their own country. They'd been everywhere else. And then they'd say, oh, that looks good. Can we join you? So that was a bit of a thrill, particularly one of the trips I did. I had a few Americans on that, and that was going from California, like Los Angeles, all the way up to the Canadian border, taking in the coastline of Oregon and the Washington state. That was just so beautiful. So America was a real success for me as a photographer, as a tour leader, as a workshop conductor, and as a landscape photographer. And here's just a couple more real diverse images. We've got we've got the beautiful Washington state. We have the Priasma Pool in Yellowstone. We've got the coast of Northern California, and we've got Yosemite light on the Bridal Veil Falls. So pretty diverse country, as Paul was saying, pretty spectacular. My other workshops over the years have included forays into Lord Howe Island with groups of people, which is a beautiful place. And I've also been there on my own to photograph. I just find it an incredibly natural place, a place to relax and unwind and really find your soul almost. It's that good.
Oh, it's amazing.
New Zealand.
In terms of Lord Howe, we've been in discussion with Ian Hutton to come on the show, so that'll be quite special. He's pretty much Mr. Lord Howe Island, especially in terms of his photography. So
Ian is Mr. Lord Howe Island. Yeah. He's an incredible guy. He's been up. There's Mount Gower and Mount Lidgebird, over 3,000 feet each of those islands. You can see me up in the top left there. I'm going up to the Goat House, which is a rope you can see right to the back of the island, 14 kilometres away, and that little image up there in the top right. Even the Goat House is incredible. But Ian goes up to count birds, and there's 300 endemic species of plant on Lord Howe Island, not found anywhere else. In fact, on the top of those two mountain tops, there's stuff up there that's not found anywhere else. It's unbelievable. And Ian, what he doesn't know about Lord Howe Island is not worth knowing. I'm telling you, the guy's an encyclopedia.
Oh, he's amazing.
He really is. So you will enjoy that, guys. I'll look forward to tuning in or catching up even afterwards. That's the wonderful thing about this. If the audience will agree with me, I'm sure, but being able to go on YouTube and catch up with some of your favorite photographers, or just to learn something new or to see something different, it's a marvelous concept. And I've been catching up with quite a few of the shows on these hot afternoons in Melbourne, when you've got the air conditioning on and a big cool drink, and you just sit there with your laptop and enjoy. That's the way to go. So we did some workshops in New Zealand. I basically ran bigger ones there. They were kind of like a half workshop, half tour. You can't get round big groups like up there in the top every night, but like Tom was saying the other week there, I remember him saying, Tom Part, he was saying that you get a diverse mix on most of your workshops, and some people don't need any help at all. They just love being there. They just love the camaraderie of the group. You get some that need quite a bit of help, and you get some that are just happy to bend an ear and have a listen. So it's a lovely mix always, and you come away having a lot of fun and getting some beautiful images. So New Zealand, of course, is another gorgeous place. A couple of my favourite places, that's the Mirror Lakes on the way to the West Coast. That's up in Mount Cook, of course. Most of us have been up there or know about it. This is they did film quite a bit of Lord of the Rings around here. This is the estuary at the top of the Fly River at Glenorchy. Quite a spectacular place.
That's it's called Paradise or something up that way.
Yeah, there's paradise. That's right. The
Yeah.
road to paradise, and it
Yeah.
goes around. And actually, it's the start of the route burn track.
Yeah.
So that's where you've got to drive right around the top and over the bridge, and then come down the other side, and then off goes the track. But if you get it at the right time, and I found April was wonderful because you got snow on the mountains, but you often got the golden colour. And there's just a few other images that I popped in there, taken on our New Zealand workshops. And I always tried to incorporate a scenic flight around Mount Cook, and it was mainly to see the glacial moraines and to be able to photograph the colours looking straight down. So we always booked a 1 hour flight, and I usually got 2 planes so that they weren't packed in, sometimes 3 planes, and they could all get a window. And then the guy would just go round and round and then over the mountains. But you come away with some spectacular graphic images.
What if you don't mind saying, the operator that you used for the flights over there?
Oh, now you're stretching it, mate. I wasn't.
It might not
Look,
be
I used
the same people.
guy.
Yeah.
And he'd always give me a discount because he wanted me to take photos. He wanted me to shoot all the snow, and he saw some of my images, and he requested some. And then the next time I went, he said, "I want some more." He said, "I'll give you, a 50% discount on the flights." And he was marvelous. And then we do an hour's flight, and he goes, "Do you want to do another 20 minutes? We're up here. We may as well stay up here."
That's my kind of pilot.
He said, "You just keep firing." And I found with all my workshops, Luke and Paul, that I use the same guy for, like, King Island. I always use King Island Air, and I now have a permanent exhibition at their airline office at Moorabbin. Their airline terminal's got all my work. There is another permanent display of my images at the Wilderness Lodge on King Island. When I did Flinders Island, Luke, I always used the same guy, Gordon Brown, out of Tooradin, and he was just wonderful because he would take me to a private airfield that his father owned down at Lady Barron, and then he'd just give me a time, and he said, "Don't worry," he said, "I've got a few chores to do if you're running late," and he said, "We'll get you back to Melbourne." And so it was very casual, but I relied on these guys who were just wonderful, And so when I did the New Zealand workshops, I always used, I'll tell you where they are. They're just, they're not far out on the road back down out of, I think they're the first little, they're at the aerodrome there at Mount Cook, but they've got their own little hangar, and they've got 2 or 3 planes. I'm trying to think of the name of them.
No,
and I've used them. I've used them about 3 times. They're wonderful guys, wonderful.
Yeah, I've just heard that it can be quite hard to find an operator that's willing to, especially if you wanted to take a door off or shoot through open a window or what have you.
Yeah, they get a bit paranoid, don't they? I have to pay extra. I got the door off on Lord Howe Island after twisting the guy's arm and promising him a couple of beers, and he was quite chuffed. But when I went up with him, he said, "I haven't done this before." I said, "Well, you want to think about it," because I said, photographers love it.
Yeah.
I said, "It's very hard to poke through an open window, when you've only got that little flap." So, if you can, as you say, a lot of operators don't want to, but Gordon would take half the plane apart if he thought, you're going to get a shot. So,
Oh, champion.
It was marvelous. And another lovely place that I took workshops to was the Scottish Highlands. Well, I always did the Western Highlands, and I'm half Scottish myself. I've got a Scottish mother, so there's sort of a call back there. I find it quite a spiritual place where my forebears came from, and I always included the inner and outer Hebrides. So I'd do Mull and Skye, and then I'd go across and do Lewis and Harris, and they were big trips too, at least 16 days. They were marvellous. And of course, being up in the Coolins on the Isle of Skye is just amazing when the weather's closing in. That's the back end of the Coolins.
I was going to ask you too, and sorry to interrupt, you've got some magnificent panos. What your ideal pano setup is?
Yeah, it's nice noticing that too.
6 shot on the vertical.
Okay.
But
And just you have like a nodally rotated head sort of thing?
no, I
Right.
shoot most of my panoramas by hand,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
I find I've got the flexibility. So the trick is you stand like a tripod. So it looks a bit rude for ladies to do it, but I always tell them, spread your legs and stand like a tripod, and then take a couple of dummy runs, so that, because you need an interesting beginning and an interesting end, and then you go out a little bit further than that. And then I said, just do 6 vertical with 30% overlap. And it's been tried and proven to me for many, many years. I use a tripod where I have to, like this one, and it took that long to set up. But that one there, that is just a pure hand shot, and making sure you got the overlap. If you give Photoshop plenty of information, it will do the job for you. So, as I said, this one I had to really set up and get the tripod level, if you've got a level on it, and then just swing it around and make sure it doesn't go off one side. I haven't got too technical, Luke, with using a nodal and things like that. Here's another hand shot. Beautiful lock. Scotland's got thousands of them. You can never stop photographing them. They're just awesome. And if you're not shooting locks, you're shooting castles. So Elan Donan Castle is always worth a stop. And if you get the right light, it's beautiful. So that brings us to up to about 10 years ago, when I started to shoot workshops with my good friend Ewan Bell. We got to know each other about a decade ago, and he invited me. He said, how about we run a workshop together? And I went, right. And he said, I'll organize everything on the ground. So he'd done a lot of Chinese ones, and then he was into Nepal a fair bit. And he said, if you can get the clients. So I rang him up 2 weeks later and said, I got the clients. When are we going? So he said, that quick? I said, yep, about 8 people want to go. He's a stickler for 8 people. I don't mind going a few over. He often says to me, I don't know how you put up with them all. And I said, they're all right. You can go to your own room and shut the door at night. So it's not a problem. Anyway, we've become really great buddies, and we come from totally different photographic backgrounds. I'm sort of a really dramatic, quite saturated sort of guy with photography, always have been, and that's what sells for me. Ewan is almost high key, desaturated kind of photojournalistic kind of photographs, and he does a lot of that work, and he sells a lot. He's a big published photographer, Lonely Planet and Gourmet Traveller, and you name it. Ewan's been there and he's done that. So he's a marvelous friend to have, and we've just formed this brilliant friendship. And I thought, we'll do one workshop and see how it goes. Well, 10 years later, we're planning the next couple. We just got together over a coffee a couple of weeks ago in the city, and we have a wonderful time together. We're both fanatical about the North, so we're always up in the Arctic. So we did the Nepal trips together, which were amazing. We kind of start off in the Kathmandu Valley, and then we soon hop in a plane and get up into the Annapurnas and into Lower Mustang.
Oh, but are you
What's
flying
unusual?
to Muktannath or something, or
Sorry?
where do you fly into? I just hiked there a couple of years ago. Is it into Muktannath area or Pokhara?
Yeah, we end up in Muktannath.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention that we use Kagbeni as our base. So if I go forward a couple.
Bringing back some memories.
If I go forward here's Kagbeni reflected in the moraine. Sorry about that. So I'll go back and I'll just tell you about. You've probably not experienced this, guys, but we've done Nepal a few times. And when you get to Pokhara and you're wanting to get up to Johnson to get your mini 4-wheel drive, your minibus or 4-wheel drives, and the weather comes in over those huge mountains because, you know, you in the Annapurnas, you've got 5 in a row all around 22,000 feet. So instead of doing the 18-minute plane flight from Pokhara up to Johnson, you've got to do 2 full days of this grueling mountain road. And it's in the process of being fixed up by the Chinese, but I don't know how many years it's going to take.
It was a bit better than even some of the pics you're showing when I was there more recently. But
okay,
yeah, it's taking.
So this is, if it rains, this is what you get. So you're coming around this corner, and someone's stuck there, and you're here with the bus, and you're trying to tow someone else up there, and then you go a bit further along, and the government, in its wisdom, has got an excavator trying to pull buses. As you can see, our bus is in there in the mix, and another bus, and there's motorbikes, and you watch these guys getting swept down this gorge. And some of the gorges you come through are the steepest in the world, like from the top to the bottom, that they are just mind-blowing. Anyway, after 2 days with, you know, your tongue in your cheek, and you're trying not to get too scared on some of these. When you lean out the window and you can see the tyre right on the edge of the ravine, you go, let's hope we get round the next bend, you know. Anyway, a beautiful sight is Nilgiri. When you get up the top and you're going between Kagbeni and Muktana, and you see Mount Nilgiri in its glory at over 22,000 feet, you go, well, I've come up here into this beautiful moraine. I can see all the gorgeous mountains round about. Then you really start photographing. You photograph the people and the customs and the little villages and the goat herders, and it's just so lovely. And the yak herders. Were you there, Luke, when they do the ploughing and they sing to their into their zoos, which is basically
didn't. I think we were there right at the
yak,
right at the start of winter, actually. So it was
right.
Yeah, beautiful weather though.
Yeah, when they plant their buckwheat, I mean, they can grow apples at 10,000 feet. I just can't believe it, what they do up there. It's incredible what they grow: maize and buckwheat and sorghum, and you name it, they grow it. And then they've got these gorgeous apple orchards. They're an incredible people, and they're more Tibetan. I mean, in the Kathmandu Valley, they're heavily influenced by the Indian population, and so they look Indian, and they have mixed over many centuries. As soon as you get up into lower or upper Mustang, you're seeing these Tibetan people who have different customs, and they're very warm and welcoming. They're just lovely, lovely people. So as I say, we stay at Kagbeni, and then we move up to Muktana. So enough of that. The other place I just wanted to briefly talk to you about is Bhutan. Ewan and I decided, he'd been there, of course, a couple of times, and he said, let's do a couple of Bhutan workshops, and these are absolutely delightful. It is such a beautiful kingdom. I can't wait to get back there again. And we've had 2 booked, and we've had to cancel 2 and move them on. So hopefully next year we've got a few different ideas. Ewan's got some irons in the fire as to what we're doing there, and we have wonderful guides there. So it's not just about the zongs or the temples, as they are referred to up there in Bhutan, or the mountain villages that has the zong at the end and the beautiful valleys. But Bhutan's all about the light as well. It's a heavily forested country. They've got some beautiful policies in place. Every tree that's chopped down, they have to plant 2.
That's right.
Their festivals are just magnificent, and Ewan is wonderful. He tries to find the country festivals where you'll be the only, when we turn up with our little group, we're the only Westerners there. The people want to share their food with you. It's just amazing. And the frost that comes in the morning through the passes and the flags and going up to Tiger's Nest, it's all just beautiful. And, you can see their paddy fields, and they still all do them traditionally mostly with the yaks, or the crossbred yak, which is the zoes. I just can't get enough of the actual look of Bhutan with its misty mountains and the forests and the paddy fields. Just
Yeah,
so,
I've spent some time there too. I think it's the people themselves and the level of refined sort of elegance and educated spirituality and commitment to maintaining their culture. It's like nowhere else I've ever been.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. It's absolutely beautiful. Their spirituality absolutely shocks you into reality a little bit. That people that your own sense of worth drops a bit, and you just think all the bling and rubbish and basically crap that the Western world goes on with, and these people don't have much materially, but they are so enriched their lives.
Very enriched.
And their interest in their neighbour and their community, and the way they help each other. I found it a little bit in Mustang in Nepal, but I found it more so in Bhutan, and it's just a delightful country to go to, and it's worth every penny. And all the viewers tonight, and I know many photographers have gone in there and had the same experience. It's just lovely. It's a beautiful way of life.
They're very committed to the idea of life continuing on, and they say that if you manage to get a trip to Bhutan, and particularly if you make it up to Tiger's Nest, then you've reached the peak of your cycle of lifetimes.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the top of the pops, so to speak.
We were very fortunate. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I feel so privileged, and very, very privileged to what I've seen and experienced. One of the trips to Bhutan, we decided to get permission from the government, and we camped in a zong 500 feet above Tiger's Nest the night before. And so our wonderful guides took everything up there and got tents done for us and got hot water, got the meals. They cooked us a 5-course meal. I mean, and then in the next morning, we only had to come down 500 feet to get the dawn. And that's the only way we could get this dawn shot of. So the sun comes around the corner, and then you get this beautiful spectral light and backlight at its best. And I took heaps of shots, and this is just one that I put on Instagram, and it's still one of my favorites because it just gives that beautiful glow. You can just see Tiger's Nest there, and after the sun came round the corner and blinded you, you could then just walk in the shadow into Tiger's Nest itself.
And are they tiny little prayer flags in the top left there as well?
Yeah.
Then you can see them up there. They're everywhere, and they're sparkling in that last bit of light, or the first bit of light, rather, the crepuscular ray of the sun that's coming around the corner.
We might have to move on to the Norfolk Island soon, Ian, or we might run out of time.
We will, mate. Yeah. I'm keeping an eye on the time. We just so we do Iceland. Iceland is just amazing. I'll just flow through these photographs. We also, Ewan and I have done workshops into the Flinders Ranges. We've done workshops into Swedish Lapland, and we've done master classes at Uluru, getting special permission like you, Luke, to go in at night and shoot the star trails and things like that. Done the Shetland Islands together, and our specialty is Arctic Norway. And we've been doing Arctic Norway for the last 7 years. We can't get enough of it. And we now have special places that we take our clients to. We started off with the Lofoten Islands, and you can see a few images there. Absolutely beautiful, the Lofoten Islands, but we want the real snow. So we're now going straight to Tromsø, and we concentrate on Senja Island, and we also concentrate on the Lingen Peninsula. And it's up there that you get this special winter, this late winter, which is incredible in terms of light. And we go in February because we get those few extra hours of daylight. So we can shoot till, nearly 5 o'clock, amazingly, that far north. And the light is just gorgeous because it doesn't come above 20 degrees. So you've got this beautiful soft side light, and you can do backlight as good as that. That's handheld, by the way, Luke.
Wow.
And so is that one, with snowflakes coming in on the camera. And when the storms come across the fjords, they're just awesome. And then, of course, we find that late February, early March is the best time for the aurora. And anywhere around Tromsø, or Tromsø, depending on how you want to say it, is where the best auroras are. And I know a couple of these I've put in are actually from the Lofoten Islands, but up there on Senja Island, they are just amazing.
I've been privileged to see one on the Lofoten Islands, and yes, when you get a good geomagnetic storm up there, it's it blows your mind, literally.
And a night and a full moon night, you agree. So basically, that's the history of where I've got to. And as I said at the start of my presentation tonight, Luke and Paul, that I come back to Norfolk Island because I remember going there 40 odd years ago shooting, and then getting an assignment with the Norfolk Island Tourist Authority. I also got an assignment with Qantas, which they called it Eastlink back then for the planes that went in there. We did a number of brochures for them. And I kept going back with a load of Fuji Velvia and shooting that island, and it was just amazing. And of course, after a few years, I got a call from the island, and it said, "You seem to be photographing over here a lot, and we seem to be booking you more and more tickets. How about coming over and bringing a few folk and running some workshops?" So that was 16 years ago, and I've done one ever since. But I think what really started it was one of my first articles was the Norfolk Island experience, and that's a Fuji Velvia shot. I wrote about this beautiful island, and it went into about 4 different magazines, and it caught the eye of someone over there on the island who ended up being Fletcher Christian's 6 times granddaughter. Her name is Becky Christian, and she ended up buying the Norfolk Island Travel Service, and she said, "I want you to run workshops here, Ian." So I started to run workshops.
That's a pretty big endorsement.
Yeah, so it's been absolutely wonderful. The mix of wonderful folk that I've been able to take with me on these workshops, introduce them to the island, introduce them to my secret spots. And of course, the newspaper, every time I go there, they'd want to come out and they say, "Look, we want to take a photo. We want to put you in the paper because you're bringing tourism to the island. You're spending money here." And of course, we're all positive. No one goes away with a bad word to say about Norfolk Island. Photographers really are a positive bunch. Doesn't matter, professional, amateur, they put up with anything if the shot's good. They'll put up with a crappy day, wet feet, a wet backside, filthy clothes, but if they've got the shot, it was a good day. And so we were really good for Norfolk Island tourism, and still am today. I've sadly missed out on the last couple of years because of COVID, but I'm fully booked. In fact, I'm overbooked this year. But anyone listening and wants to come, there's always next year. I've got 14 coming this year for 9 days. The workshops I run here, guys, is beautiful because we slow down. I take 9 days, and at that time, it takes that long to get round the little island. And for me to show them my special places, I have places picked out for the dawn, such as Captain Cook's Memorial there, and also down at Cemetery Bay. And in the evening, there's Point Ross and Headstone Point. And so I've always got gorgeous spots. I've got afternoon spots as well. And I have middle of the day spots. I've got spots where if it's an inclement day or a misty day, I can take them into the rainforest at 40 acres or up in the national park or into Palm Valley. Now, incredibly, I'm going to show you some pictures now for the next 45 minutes to an hour, and we're going to talk about it. This little island is 8 kilometres long and 5 kilometres wide. And I often get asked, what's there apart from the ubiquitous pine tree? And I go, well, there's lots of pine trees, but it's all the stuff in between that is so, so beautiful. Yes, a little island that small. It's a volcanic speck in the ocean. The nearest landfall is 600 kilometres away, and that's New Caledonia, Noumea, and that's where they get their fuel. The fuel gets brought out by tanker and pumped onto the island. I think it's about 1,200 kilometres from the east coast of Australia. And that's what makes Norfolk Island so special. People say to me, oh, I know about the cows on Norfolk Island because they're allowed to roam free. And that's true. You can get a license from the local government council to run some animals alongside the road. So the whole island looks pristine because the cattle keep it to a sort of a shortish type of rough lawnmower. And especially after rain, when it's intensely green, almost like an emerald green, like England, it really is that beautiful little place in the Pacific, like no other. So the cattle are a major draw card for a lot of tourists. They see them everywhere. Unfortunately, as you can see, there's 3 beasts up the top there. They get a little bit close to the edge sometimes, and there's no second chance. And the odd cow falls off those huge cliffs on the island. But they roam the countryside. Here's a few cattle on the country lane. Here's some more coming past those beautiful Moreton Bay figs on New Farm Road. But it's the laneways too. Although Kingston's got the main modern town of Burnt Pine, and there's quite a few people live in that, the island's dotted with little holdings from the Pitcairn days, and most people have a few acres. And so these little laneways just look like the back of England. And wherever you travel over the island, you've got these little old broken fences and shocking patchy road because they haven't really fixed up the roads in a long time. And that's one of the banes of discontent with the locals, that the government doesn't spend enough there. Australia does a lot there, and that's a bone of contention. Some say it does too much, and that's Australians, and the locals say it doesn't do enough, but that's political, and we won't get into that. But the laneways are just lovely, and you get the crest of the road, and then it disappears, and then it goes around another corner, and all the beautiful trees that grow on the island are just so lovely too. And I'll probably run through, I think I've got it here, there's some of the trees, yes. So you've got the ubiquitous pine that's all over the island.
Is that endemic as well? Like, it's only found on Norfolk, isn't it? Or
sorry?
I mean, it's growing everywhere now, and like at beachside destinations all around Australia.
Yeah, so the Norfolk pine is endemic to the island. You've also got the Norfolk oleander, you've got the Norfolk beech, and you've got the Norfolk palm tree, and you also have bloodwoods and ironwoods. You've got a white oak, which I'll show you before we finish this evening, and you've got this incredible thing called Samson sinew, which I'll show you a few pictures of. And then there's one that I won't show you because I can't stand it. It's called the devil's guts, and it's it's a big bush full of thorns, and they rip you seriously. If you get your clothing caught, you know, it's quite embarrassing. So all these gorgeous laneways, just you wonder where they go, and they wind round the hills and the undulating parts of the island, and it's just so lovely. And sometimes they go, there's a couple of tracks. It's aptly described. It's called Red Road, and you can hardly drive up that when it rains. But the island is just so beautiful. And I think I've photographed every road back and front and in and out over the years there. I'm sure I have. I've got thousands of images, and I'm just trying to show you the look and feel of the island tonight mainly. So first of all, concentrating on the vegetation, and then the roadways, which are beautiful. And then, of course, most people associate Norfolk Island with the Georgian village of Kingston, which was built during the second settlement. So we have to go back a little bit further than Kingston if we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the island. And so it's a place that's just round the corner. So on my extreme left there of the image, you can see the end of Kingston, and then you come along this gorgeous little winding road and you drive up into the next valley, and that's called Arthur's Vale. Now, Arthur's Vale is where the first here is looking down into Arthur's Vale back towards the water wheel, the old grist mill, and then the dam itself on the Water Wheel Creek. So this was the place where the first settlement happened. When Australia was first conquered, as we say now, and we had Arthur Phillip come here with a bunch of convicts in some awful leaking ships, he soon found out that, or acknowledged that the little colony was going to starve. And he'd actually been told a couple of weeks before he left on the voyage that the British Admiralty wanted him to go to this little island that Captain Cook had discovered. Captain Cook raved about the pine trees being wonderful for masts and the flax being wonderful for sailcloth. Well, neither worked. Most of the trees were rotten inside, and the flax wasn't as good as the New Zealand flax, so that never eventuated. But what they did find when they came back with the two ships, the Sirius and the Supply, came 2 weeks after they settled Sydney, and they started growing food here, and it actually saved Sydney's bacon. Literally, they grew food here, and they were able to ship it back until the arrival of the second fleet. So Britain, it was an experiment with Britain, the whole thing, and it nearly failed. And so Norfolk played a vital part in the settlement. So they quickly found some coral limestone, and they built this mill. And then behind it, they dammed this little creek, and it's still called Water Wheel Dam today. And there it is in some beautiful afternoon light. And they were able to water all their crops down that valley, as you can see in that photograph there. So that was the first settlement, which lasted about 20 to 25 years. And then they decided to close the place down. The British no longer needed it. They wrecked most of the buildings. They didn't want the French taking it over, so they made sure it wasn't worth them coming there to look. And they sent all the people down to you guys, which is now called New Norfolk. And that's where they resettled the first settlement.
No way.
So, yeah.
I didn't realise that, yeah.
And they also, they split them up. It wasn't called New Norfolk, but as soon as they got there, they decided to rename the town there New Norfolk. And most of them are from the first settlement. And the rest they sent up to Longford. And there's a Longford on Norfolk Island. A little area is called Longford, and that's why Longford in Tasmania is called Longford as well. So this first settlement was dispersed to Tasmania. So now we move forward a few years to the notorious second settlement, and it was Britain was a cruel maritime nation, and it didn't meet her out justice very well at all, even for the times. And even though we look at Norfolk today and we go, my goodness me, that Slaughter Bay and over to Phillip Island and the golf course, what an idyllic place. And when you get up in the morning at Elizabeth Lookout and you shoot a panorama of Kingston, you go, this is just amazing. And it is. It's got a World Heritage listing on it now. It is so beautiful in the morning before the sunlight even gets up, with those clouds just scudding past. You're looking out at Slaughter Bay and also Sydney Bay here. Every one of those buildings was hand cut out of the low tide coral, which I'll show you in a moment over there in Cemetery Bay. And this is now the largest Georgian village outside of England in the world. Been fully restored by the Australian government, I might add, and just partially hidden by the beautiful pine trees there, the Norfolk Pines, is Government House, where up until recently they had residing governor from Australia. He's now called an administrator, which is not a good word for Norfolk Islanders, but there you go. He looks after Australia's interests there. Okay, so this is looking from Shearwater, which is a beautiful cliff top. This is a panorama taken with a 250mm lens. And I just wanted to show you how beautiful it looks from a stacked perspective, where you've got Little Emily Bay in there. You've got the Lone Pine Point, that's called Point Hunter. You can just make out the salt house in there. And then you've got the wharf at Sydney Bay itself. In fact, the wharf separates Sydney Bay from Slaughter Bay. And there's gorgeous coral reefs in there. And at low tide, you can walk all over them. It's just amazing.
So Ian, sorry to interrupt. We just had a question on YouTube from Laurel, Luke, just around if you could pick a time of year to go to Norfolk, what would you suggest, or is it good all times?
Look, I wouldn't go during the school holidays, particularly Christmas. It's great to swim, but there's a lot of people there. As a photographer, and I've been running, as I've mentioned, workshops there for many years, I go on the cusp of the seasons. As a landscape photographer, we know that between seasons, when there's the change in the equinox, you get a little bit of rough weather and you get some interesting weather. So I always go either late August through to mid-September. I just find that absolutely wonderful. I get some stormy days, I get lots of sunlight, and I get these gorgeous mornings. So here's some of the historic buildings. There's the engineer's office, and there's the supply store, and there's the old grist mill, that building over there on the far right with no roof. That's where they had the convicts going round by hand. They didn't have oxen. They just used the convicts to grind the wheat that they were growing.
Yeah, right.
And we're just lucky enough to grab a rainbow in the morning. As I say to people, the more often you photograph, the luckier you get. And, I mean, that's a standard answer, but it's true. And the more I go to Norfolk Island, the better I like it. And the more interesting and beautiful images I get of this beautiful place. The light's like no other. Because there's no landfall for hundreds and hundreds of kilometres, it's just a little speck of rock. The special lighting, it's spectral lighting. It just comes in, it's fresh, it's gregarious. It's just so beautiful and sweet. And even when the sun gets up, it's got a particular beauty to it as well. And then you get the misty days, and we're still in Kingston, and this is what they call the Kingston Common. And after a heavy rain, there's a few little swamps through there that they never bother to clean up, and it's lovely. And the cattle come in and they bog around in the weed, the duckweed there, and the water fern, and they munch away, and it's just beautiful even in the mist. And on a lovely day, this is mid-morning. This is looking back now, so I'm using front lighting here, and you can just see a touch of Sydney Bay between the rock and the tree there. And we've got all sorts of things going on here. We've got the pine trees, we've got the bloodwoods, we've got the white oaks, and all these lovely native trees are growing in there, and this gorgeous light just going right across the Kingston Common. And then, of course, some mornings, the backlight is just superb. For 5 minutes, you get reflected light, you get that beautiful pink pre-dawn glow, and you just fire away, and your group's with you, and they think you're wonderful because you got them out on time. And I always say, because I almost know how many minutes it's going to take from our accommodation to anywhere on the island. I can time it to the minute. So this one is a 7-minute drive. So I say the sun's going to be up at 6 o'clock. We need to be down there at 10 to 6. So we leave at 1:45, and we're not waiting for you. So they're all out there, just got up. It's wonderful. You just pull on a set of tracks, pants over your jammies or whatever you're wearing, if you're not wearing anything, and your track top, and put a coat on because it's a bit chilly in the morning. Tripods are already in the vans, and away you go. And then, of course, they've got one of the most historic, well, it is the most historic cemetery in the whole of Australasia. And it goes back to the first settlement. There's a couple of unmarked graves there, and then there's quite a lot from the second settlement. And of course, you can read all the tragedies. The graves have been preserved, and you can read about drownings, and there's Murderer's Mound just outside the gate, where supposedly quite a few uprisers were hung, and then they weren't allowed on consecrated ground. So they were put outside, and I'm actually standing on Murderers Mound now, looking out to Nepean Island and Phillip Island off there on the left, and I can look through to the old courthouse, which is now the golf course, and I can see a little bit of the buildings of Kingston and the cemetery in that lovely morning light as well. It's the rural area too that's beautiful, guys. I'm looking up here to Mount Bates. There's two little hills. They call them mountains over there. We joke about them. They're only 318 metres high. I think one's 316 and one's 318 metres. So Mount Pitt and Mount Bates. But I tell you what, they can cause some havoc. If it fogs in, or if there's a sea mist, the planes can't leave, because, you know, they've got that thing of the point of no return, and they can't come back. So they often, you know, well, not often, but I've been there myself once or twice, and the flight's been delayed for quite a long while until the mountains decide to lift themselves of the mist. So you've got these beautiful valleys that go up into the rainforest and the national park, and all the valleys and all the undulating land seems to slope up towards the two mountains which are at the back of the island. And when you go up to the top and look down, you can see the layers. It's just so grand. And everyone's got a little bit of rural land, as I mentioned before, and they run a few animals. There's quite a lot of cattle on the island. In fact, they've got their own breed, the Norfolk Island Blue, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so it's one of these absolutely peaceful, tranquil, serene places that you get into island life and you don't want to leave. An island of 1,500 people. They know each other. You have the island wave, which is when you're driving the car, you raise a finger when you pass anyone. It's called the Norfolk.
Flinders does the same.
Yeah, Flinders does the same thing. You're right, and King Island does too.
Oh, cool.
But they call it the Norfolk Island wave there, and you can tell a lazy person because they just do that, you know. and some of, you know, when you get there, that all my group, they're waving out the bus like this to everyone, and by the end of the week, they're just going, oh, you know, it's quite lovely. So I love the island in all sorts of light, and misty light is just as beautiful with a little bit of side lighting coming in. That's looking down near we're just right next to the national park, looking down in near the botanical gardens there. This is from Shearwater. This is a private residence. What's lovely about Norfolk Island, going there so often, I've made some lovely friends. I've got quite a few friends and acquaintances there, people I know, they trust me. So when I get there the first day, I ring around, I say, love to bring a group out to your farm, onto your property. We're going to photograph from the ridgeline. The lady here, she's absolutely a delight. She lives in Sydney. She's got a gorgeous house here, and she has a couple of rental units on there. And if there's no one, if she's between clients, and she'll say, look, if you come Wednesday afternoon, just after they've cleaned, she said, you got the place for an hour or two before my next clients turn up. And then you can get these unique shots of the island that the public can't get, which I absolutely love. What's also beautiful about the island, a lot of the roads, you think they're going to run into the sea, but they don't. They turn a corner. This is Fletcher Christian Drive, and it runs into Music Valley, which then runs round into Bloody Bridge and then round the corner into Kingston. So I know the island so well, I can close my eyes and I can picture the road and the next corner. And so I'm in the bus because I usually get a Tscharke for my group and a car. And so I always have to have another driver, but one car and one Tscharke is wonderful. It gives us all a bit of space. And I often say to the group, if you look carefully on the left as we go around the next corner, you'll see this or you'll see that. And it's sort of like I know it better than my own suburb, you know. It's hilarious.
How many workshops do you think you run there, Ian, over the years?
I've run one every year for 16 years.
Oh, right. Yeah, there you go.
And I've been over about 4 times to do some extra photography for clients and things like that. With all my workshops, if Ewan's been there and we start a new one and he knows it well, I don't mind. But I've never run a workshop without doing going there first and basically sussing out the best morning and afternoon light, accommodation options, flights, things like that. And also talking to local photographers is a big plus. Most photographers are happy to share their knowledge, which is wonderful, especially when they know you're coming from another country and you're not going to poach their clients. But all in all, I haven't had much trouble with other photographers. We're basically a really good bunch. We're happy to share our secrets of places, because I always tell clients and say, "Oh, you don't want to tell where you've been." You go, "Well, it doesn't matter. Even if they stand on the same spot as you, it's different light, different day, different season. Not going to get the same shot as you." So sorry, Luke.
Just another thing I don't think we mentioned what the flight time is to Norfolk and where you can fly from.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a bit of a bummer. It's changed over the years. Many years ago, I used to fly direct from Melbourne. It was great. You have 2 options now, because there's a bit of a sad story. I'll move on to the next image just while we're talking. Backward one. Oh, where am I going? Going forward now. Here we go. We'll look at that one because we're talking about flights. That's the airport there.
Oh, right.
In beautiful afternoon light. That's the one I wanted when we started to chat about this. So basically, you've got a couple of options now. You can fly from Sydney or fly from Brisbane. I prefer Brisbane. I hate going through Sydney because you've got to go from domestic to international. It's a real pain. You have to do that at Brisbane as well, but it's a lot easier. Brisbane seemed to have it down to a fine art, and the timing's lovelier there as well.
So there's different. Lord Howe is a domestic still, isn't it? But so they
Lord Howe's a domestic. Norfolk Island should be a domestic now because things have changed drastically over the many years that I've been going there. It was totally self-governing from when I was going there in the late 70s right up till recently. It was self-governing. It had its own lower house. So it passed its own local laws, and we, as a government, the federal government, used to send a governor there, and he resided in the governor's house. Now there's an administrator, and he looks, and they've also got a federal office there, and the locals have to pay land tax. But to be fair to the Australian government, the Norfolk Island, I mean, I love the people to bits. They're the result of the 3rd settlement on Norfolk Island, which is the Pitcairners. So you've got all these half Tahitian women that had been taken up with the old English sailors that went with Fletcher Christian. And then, of course, the result of that was also American sailors on whaling ships, jumping ships at Pitcairn. So you had this bunch of Pitcairn Islanders who couldn't all survive on that tiny little speck. So the British government gave them another speck. It was funny because Queen Victoria, they wrote to her, and she just said, well, she gave it to the Admiralty. She said, well, here's a problem. She said, I've got subjects out there in the middle of the Pacific and they haven't got a home. She said, what are you going to do about it? And they said, well, we've just got the perfect spot. We've just closed the disgusting old penal colony there. They can have that place. So that's why the Pitcairn Islanders ended up on Norfolk. So there are lovely people. They've got their own language. They've got their own quaint customs and their way of life. But unfortunately, they've not been able to run the island without getting into a serious debt. And the Australian government does spend a lot of money there. And so they've come under the federal government's umbrella now, where they've been offered Medicare, better medical services, so they can all fly to the mainland for medical services and hospital and so on. The government also provides all the education there. You've got a little school of 240 children, and there's 40 subjects they can take on that island. So there's a lot of teachers there. The national park, which covers quite a bit of the island because it's also Phillip Island as well, is run by Parks New South Wales. The airport's completely run by federal airports. The police are federal police. So a lot of money is spent there. Anyway, moving on. Did I answer your question?
I think so. Just
flights?
That Brisbane's the preference, and I don't think we
Brisbane's the prefer. I always fly out of Brisbane. It's Air New Zealand. Unfortunately, many years ago, the Norfolk Islanders decided to run their own airline, and so they leased a plane off Qantas and never paid the lease payments. So Qantas got a bit jerked off about that, and then decided they weren't going to fly there. So Air New Zealand, it suits them though, because they can do a flight Brisbane. They can do Brisbane Burnt Pine, which is the airport here, and then they go down to Auckland. So it's they can run freight and passengers in a couple of times a week. So Air New Zealand actually does a wonderful service there. I can't praise them highly enough, because the service is just wonderful.
And is it about, what I'm guessing, 6 hours or something, or bit
No. It's from Brisbane to Norfolk Island's about 2.5 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So what I do is I fly up to Brisbane the afternoon before, and I stay at the airport. It's not that expensive, and the flight's at 10 o'clock. I've done it a couple of times out of Melbourne at 5 o'clock, and I really don't like it. It's pushing it a bit. So I go up the night before, and then I just fly out in the morning, and it's a beautiful flight. And of course, you have to change your clocks. Back, is it forward? New Zealand's ahead of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's not quite New Zealand time. It's halfway between New Zealand time and the Australian mainland. So they're on what they call Norfolk time. And the trouble is the clock never goes forward. Norfolk time is 40 years ago, you know.
And then would it be a similar flight time from Auckland then, or is it even closer?
It's a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So some of the open spaces, the rural areas of Norfolk, are just beautiful. And I have all these beautiful little spots that the tourists never go to, little creeks that run over into tiny little waterfalls, little areas where you're allowed to walk in as long as you shut the gate and take people down to the coastline. This is Mission Valley. The Polynesians, there was a church in Polynesia that set up a mission. It's called the Melanesian Mission back in the 1800s. When the Pitcairners first went there, they're very religious people. I think Seventh-day Adventism is one of the biggest religions on the island. But they had this mission, and they were given this big valley, and it's still beautiful now. And the church is just gorgeous. It's all imported from Britain. So there's marble, there's basically marble and timber inside that church imported from Britain, and it's still gorgeous. So it's well worth a look. So I go around the island at different times of the day, either on my own or with the group, and just give them basically a kaleidoscope journey of beautiful colours and light every day that they're there. This is another magnificent dawn shot, and this is New Farm Road, and these are the Brisbane Moreton Bay figs that were planted during the second settlement, and they are just lovely. The buttresses are something to behold. And on the left-hand side where the fence is, that's what they call the 100-acre reserve, and that's a special little rainforest where you get the snowy terns and other birds coming in. There's a couple of abandoned Pitcairner cottages around the island. They built a special house for themselves. They were all basically on the same plan, with a veranda all the way around and shuttered windows. And most of them are in a beautiful state. They've been all restored, but there's a couple that are in a sad state of repair. And then, of course, people often say to me, would you like to take your group through my private garden? So I have I've got a few private gardens that I go to, and they're just delighted to for me to take people through, and they can photograph, because you get a lot of ladies, females on the trip, and they just love gardens. They really do. And it's something different to photograph, and it fills in the day too. I actually, my biggest hassle on the island in 9 days is to get round everything I want to show them, believe it or not.
Wow.
And then we get to the rainforest. This is the 100-acre reserve. We also have Palm Valley, and then we've got the full national park itself. The Norfolk Island palm tree is the highest in the world. It's higher than the Australian palm tree, and you are just mesmerised by the height of these beautiful palms and pandanus. And then we've got the bloodwoods, and there's some old ones on the island, and you could almost film Harry Potter in there. It's I got this little spot I take them to, and I can't get them out of there. Like, they just go mad in there. And then you've got there's a couple of properties that have huge strangler figs, and I take them in there as well, and they do close-ups and all sorts of things. And I always get permission to go in. I don't assume that I can just march in without asking. So I line all this up. And then there's one special place near Mission Valley on private property as well. And this is where the Samson's sinew is. So all these shots here, this is this amazing, and the trunks grow up to about 8 centimeters in diameter, and they've got all these crazy shapes. Like, you think someone had knotted them in ropes, and they're so beautiful to photograph with a wide angle lens. So all these were shot with the 12mm full frame. So I love it in there. And again, I just march people around this little circuit, and you've got some rocks that grow over rocks and around rocks, and it's just lovely. And then, of course, there's the coastlines. There is the beautiful Anson Bay, which is one of my favourites because of the sunsets. This is where they brought the cable in when they were starting communications between Australia and the Pacific Ocean, including New Zealand. So they brought it into Anson Bay, where there was a repeater station. This is a handheld 6-shot panorama taken from a boat that was jerking up and down. And I did about 10 goes at it. And one of them, I had to take images from different ones. And I ended up getting this perfect shot of Anson Bay from the ocean. It was a hard task. I try to incorporate a boat trip around the island if I can. But Anson Bay, no matter what the weather, and here we've got a storm coming in, it is just beautiful in the late afternoon light. So I take the people on my workshops down to the Anson beach itself, and there's a gorgeous little rock down there called Pulpit Rock. And when you look down, you can actually see it. You could walk into the middle of it and preach to the ocean. It's really lovely. And at low tide, you can walk along the right-hand side and get some amazing shots like this. So I'm looking straight into Pulpit Rock here now. And from the photo here, if you look at this one, I'm looking back up where I shot that other image.
And is it sort of like Flinders Island, where, you're lucky to see someone on the beach kind of thing as well, I'm assuming? Yes.
Yeah. In September, it's I might get Zach there sometimes. Anyone know the Norfolk Island photographer? He's wonderful. He's a surf photographer.
Oh, right.
He's married to the gorgeous Emily. They've got a couple of kiddies, and they run a goat farm there. But Zach is a marvelous photographer. If you want to have a look at his work, he's called Stuck on a Rock for photography.
I think I have heard of him. Yeah,
yeah,
I've heard of that. Yeah,
he'd be worth getting on. He does. Yeah. He does amazing videos of not just the island, but of undersea, and he's got a real gorgeous eye. Totally different to me. Anyway, him and I have had some great times, and he's promised to take me out to Phillip, because I haven't been out there for many years. And I'll get on. That's the last thing I want to talk about once we've got through Norfolk. We're going all right for time, are we, guys? We've got more time? We've got
probably about, we normally wrap up in about 10 or so minutes, but we can always go over a little bit. There's no dramas there.
Well, I had it worked out that I would finish about 9:30, so
that's all right.
I got a bit carried away on everywhere else.
No, it's all good.
Anyway, Anson Bay is Anson Bay is also famous for the seaweed, the green seaweed that covers the rocks. And at low tide, it's just an amazing place when the tide goes out and you get these gorgeous rocks in the foreground. I take my group
normally
down.
is a bit better too around the time you'd be going there. I always noticed that it seemed to be better in the early spring, that green seaweed on the rocks.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It doesn't burn off or die off. You're right there, Luke. So I just find this island, this particular beach, Anson Bay, just so beautiful. And we try to do quite a few long exposures there. There's Pulpit Rock. And I try to get some very long exposures. And this is where I teach long exposures to the uninitiated. And I also tell them not to do this because there's a bit of an undertow there. And, it's the water's warm, of course. It's even though we're in spring, it's subtropical, the island. So the water's not cold, even though you're not that keen on going swimming. So I always end up getting very wet, but I take a towel and you can dry off. It's the equipment I worry about. Okay, moving on to this is now Slaughter Bay, and that's some beautiful early morning light looking towards the Kingston Wharf and some of the old government buildings there. And you can see up on the hilltop, there's some sparkling light up there. That's Shearwater. That's the private residence I often take my group to shoot back. Another wonderful place is Two Chimneys Reserve. This is a very dramatic spot. And if I can, the ones that are game, and again, I've got a mixed group. So sometimes I have people that are adventurous and will want to go everywhere. And then I have others that'll go, no, we'll just photograph from here, thanks. Because the cliffs are a bit daunting. But I often take people down into the valley just in where you can see the pine trees, and that's where that little creek is. So that's Two Chimneys Reserve. Then we've got Cascade Bay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Cascade Bay is where the ships are unloaded. So there's a big storm coming in, and this is the new winch and the port. Sorry, not the port, but the wharf, an all-weather, all-climate wharf that the Australian government built for them. And, of course, everything comes in on lighter boats. It's quite an adventure in itself to go down and watch them unload a ship, and everything's brought in on these lighter boats. And these beautiful lighter boats are built by the craftsmen on the island. And, of course, when they're no longer seaworthy, they just dot them around Kingston, and that's why you always get these old boats in your shots down at Kingston, because they're the old boats that they no longer use or are seaworthy for this job. I mean, that four-wheel drive has just come off that boat there, so pretty incredible. Next door to Cascade Bay, we have Ball Bay. Ball Bay is where they pump the fuel. There's nothing else in Ball Bay. The government, in its wisdom, has built this. It's low key, you can't see it, but that's where they keep the diesel and the fuel, and it's pumped in. And now, the last time I was there, they'd moved some of these rocks. They were going to put them back, but they were building a platform to have a place where they could hook in easier the lines off the tanker ship as it came in. But this is first light of the morning at Ball Bay. And then we have Emily Bay, which is a coral reef, but it's also it's the safest swimming beach on Norfolk Island, because it's the only beach that doesn't have surf. So you can swim in there in complete safety. And I love it, particularly if the weather's a little bit unusual and you get some colours in the sky. I just love the way Emily Bay comes up. And you got Point Hunter there on the left with the lone pine. And that's been there since the second settlement. That pine tree has survived everything and is still there. This is Ross Point, a huge mutton bird or shearwater colony down here. So when I take everyone up to photograph this in the afternoon light, because it's beautiful for dusk, I tell them, in fact, I guide them around all the mutton bird holes. And you can see back to Nepean Island on the right-hand side, and just the touch of Point Hunter. So you get quite a bit of the island here, because you can see over there on the left, that's actually the 100-acre reserve. So you're seeing the bottom third of the island here. It's beautiful. And I just put, that's my hire car. I put in there for a sense of scale. You can't get down that road if it rains. So if it rains, I always leave this till the last day. Let it have 2 or 3 days of drying out, and then that red road is okay to drive on. It's an absolutely beautiful spot though. And you can get very different compositions. Sometimes you get the masked boobies coming here as well. Another beautiful walk is what they call a red rock walk. And this takes you down to some very red volcanic rocks. And there is Bird Island and Elephant Rock.
Oh, wow.
There's about 13 islets along one side of the island. And it's quite incredible, isn't it? So you can get that from the cliff face.
Can you get down the bottom, or is it a bit too?
You can. So there's a couple of guys there that run kayak tours, well worth doing. So I do a boat trip with my group, and this is what they see. So we actually go through one. This is called, the one up here in the top left is called Cathedral Rock, but there's also another rock that you can't see from the shoreline because it's the way it sits in regard to Norfolk's coastline, and you can drive the boat through there. So that's a bit of a thrill. We usually go through it 3 times. And so the island from the ocean looks totally amazing, and it's well worth doing the island. But if you guys want to, if you ever go there, do the kayak trip. I can highly recommend it. Now, this is Point Howe, and there are 3 lonely little oleander trees there that have been there forever, and they're bending. And I always take them out there because it's just such a lonely spot with a bit of wind, and there's quite a few masked boobies that nest over the edge of that.
The island really strikes me as a fantastic place for those more intimate shots as well. I mean, the shapes of all the trees you've shown, and like I'm sure there's plenty there that haven't really been that much of a photographic subject before as well. I mean, you'd have a field day almost.
Oh, Luke, unbelievably so. And then we've got my favourite bay is Cemetery Bay because of the dawn light. And I'll just run through a few of these very briefly to show you what the dawn does at Cemetery Bay. Yes. So I actually get them down there quite a few times during the week. And then at the end of the 8 or 9 days, I say to them, where would you like to go? Oh, let's go back to Cemetery Bay. So it is just an awesome place.
Wow.
And you can never 2 mornings is the same. Rainbows, storms, and then sunlight. It's just incredible. And then, of course, if you come back a little bit, the cemetery is actually borders Cemetery Bay, and you can see these 2 images here, just how magnificent the light is, even if it's stormy, as shown there on the left. So I love Cemetery Bay, and it has one extra secret. Because at low tide, even in the middle of the day like this, when the tide goes out, you can see clearly what the second settlement convicts did. They actually created almost paddy fields, and all these cuts are where they cut the coral to build Kingston. So every building in Kingston has been cut out of Cemetery Bay. And can you imagine them up to their knees in water at low tide, cutting coral with no shoes on, because it'll cut you to pieces. I always tell people to bring a pair of good waders, and also the pull-on clip, that you use in the ice.
Like crampons or
crampons,
microspikes.
Just a cheap pair of crampons and a pair of what we call coasterneering shoes, very lightweight. And then they can get out on all these. They can do the low tide in Sydney Bay and Slaughter Bay, and they can also do the low tide here. And you're always hearing the surf because it's ready to come back in. It goes out just enough to get in these photographs, and then it starts swirling in around you. It's quite thrilling. It's beautiful. And then we've got Creswell Bay, which is further round again. This is another beautiful bay that I love.
Wow.
This is a beautiful sort of mid-morning light. And when the tide goes out, you can see all the gorgeous rock pools and the seaweeds and the lichen-covered rocks and goodness knows what. And then we go further round and we get a good view of Phillip Island. And then we keep coming round, and it's called Two Sands. No one knows about it. It's a tiny little beach that's around from Creswell's Bay. And there's some incredible dark rocks here, which are not found in a lot of other places on the island. And in the stormy and afternoon light, they are exceptionally good. And then we've got the Cascade pool, which is an incredible place to photograph. That looks worse than it is. If we get down there, everyone's frightened to photograph because
my God.
Yeah, the water's coming in, and it's just mind-blowing. But it is the most beautiful, beautiful spot. Hard to get to. You got to rope down, and then a lot of people won't come down with me. But you get shots like that, they sing. They really do. Then we've got Captain Cook's Monument. And you can see down into the cord. That's actually where Captain Cook brought his ship in. And that's absolutely beautiful to go down to. That's probably one of the hardest places to get down to. There's got some rope sections and very steep sections. You've got to wait for the tide to go out, and then you can run around this huge lagoon, and often you'll see a sea turtle in there. Just waiting for the tide to come back in. And then at the afternoon light, you've got the colours of the ocean incredibly. And here's a couple of my group that ventured down with me. And you can see the vast expanse of the island there, right from Captain Cook's Lookout on the left, around to the top on the right. And lastly, tonight, just for 5 minutes, I'd love to chat with you about Phillip Island.
Yeah.
When I was doing my book, for many years, a good friend of mine over there is Sorrel Wilby, who's most of you will know from the Getaway days, and she had a lot to do with Australian Geographic, a famous lady that traversed the Himalayan, first lady to cross the Himalayan on foot, I believe. She's written 14 books. She lives on the island. Her and her husband actually started the TV station there, which they've since sold. Anyway, Sorrel, I was telling Sorrel I wanted to do this book, and I was showing her some of the images and that, and she said, "Where's Phillip Island?" I said, "Well, I haven't got out there yet." And she said, "You can't do a book on Norfolk Island without being out to Phillip Island." So I said, "Yeah, but it's treacherous." She said, "Don't mind that." She said, "I've got a boatman that'll get us out there." So she's one of the, there's quite a few now that are registered with the National Parks of Australia, and you have to go out with a guide. The fishermen go out, the locals are allowed out, but tourists are not allowed out unless they're with an experienced boatman and a guide. So this is where you land. You wait for the wave to bring you in, you jump off the boat, and then you get your gear handed to you. So she said, "We're going to bring Aiden," which is her boy, who's now finished uni and is a young man. But Aiden was a fantastic teenager. He was up for anything. So he came with us. We went out for the full day. And when you leave the boat, you've got to come up this steep cliff by the aid of ropes. And when you get to the top, it is just incredible, because they call Phillip Island the Uluru of the Pacific. Because what happened in the early days, so there's Sorrel lying down shooting photographs, like the mad lady she is. She's absolutely wonderful, but she's quite mad. And there's Aiden. I said to Aiden, "Let's do some rock hopping. I want to get him in relationship to the actual raw earth out there." So there's these kaleidoscopes of colours. There's Sorrel going down through a valley there. The island's full of bird life. So you've got these amazing amount of birds up there. I can't believe how many birds, like masked boobies and hooded terns and birds like that. And you can get really close to the masked boobies. That was taken with a 12mm lens.
Oh, 12, geez.
Yeah.
Must have been close.
Yeah, he was saying, you know, you can don't come any closer. I feel, but it's such an amazing island because of the colours, and of course during the second settlement, it was used as a larder. Basically the soldiers just put goats and pigs and rabbits out there, and then they'd go out in a rowboat and do some hunting and bring back fresh food for the larder. And so by the 70s and 80s, just back a few years, it was almost denuded to nothing. So the national park stepped in, and they actually eradicated all the vermin off the island. The birds have come back in their tens of thousands. And so slowly but surely, the Uluru of the South is the South Pacific is slowly fading away.
If you said that left shot was Norfolk Island or near Norfolk Island, you just never believe it, would you?
I would have said Death Valley, maybe.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it? Anyway, at the back of the island, you've got one point called Tscharke, and it's 280 meters high. And so we trudged up to the back, and it was an incredible sight. And now you can see from Tscharke, you can actually see the whole of Norfolk Island in the distance and Little Nepean Island just in front of it. So there she is out in the Pacific Ocean. And the trees are starting to grow back now. And then finally, just we always do a bit of night photography there. The Milky Way comes up about 10:30 at that time of the year. Yep. There's one of those beautiful Norfolk white oaks with some stars behind it. And of course, I always try to get the Milky Way in the cemetery, and I take a whole group of people down there. That is the ones that are not scared of ghost stories. And we get down there because there's no lights. It's just wonderful. So after all that, I decided to bring that book out after visiting the island and finishing off my photographs for the book. And we had this wonderful launch. Sorrel was my MC, and it went into a lot of the tourist brochures that you shouldn't leave the island without grabbing my book. Government House used it as an official gift for a couple of years, which was lovely. And then the final feather in the cap was over 4 years, from 2017 to 2020, Australia Post brought out a series of stamps using my photography, which was lovely. Great. So they did Norfolk Island waterfalls first, and then they did the Crystal Pool. Then they did Phillip Island, and then they did the Norfolk Blue, which is their own variety of beef cow. Well, so that brings me up to now when I just want to go back. I want to sit on a beach or a rocky outcrop, and I want to watch the surf. I want to sit and watch a lonely pine with the birds, as you can see in the sky there as dots, and the lovely light. There's nothing as more magical than this island, and I've grown to love it more and more as the years have gone by, and I'm hoping that I can still get out there quite a few times yet.
Well, thanks so much for that amazing presentation, Ian. It's there's so many brilliant photos there.
I saw half the planet tonight.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I
just makes me realize
a long time, Ian, but I had no idea the diversity and the range of places and cultures and landscapes that you've experienced. You've probably seen a lot more than many landscape photographers will ever see in multiple lifetimes. And you managed to, I guess, create a legacy by bringing them into book form as well that will live beyond you.
Yeah, I'd like to bring out a couple more books. They're a work of love, basically, because they're not the most profit-inspired book, and I've been lucky because all my books have had to some degree. Like the last one was totally financed. I shared in the profits, but I didn't have to finance it because it was a winner. Like Becky said to me, she said, "When are you going to do a book on Norfolk Island?" I said, "Well, goodness me." I said, "What time have I got?" And she said, "Just do one. finance it, you know. So I mean, I think they're all out of print now. I mean, I don't think there's any left on the island.
Wow. It'd be awesome to have both, like a bit of a Ian Rolfe collection there, but I can only dream, I suppose. I had a good page through it when I was on Flinders. Quite a few of the guys there, places I stayed, had the Flinders book, but I'd love to see the Norfolk book as well one day. And have you thought about something like King Island, given you've done so much?
I've got one. I've done a dummy copy, a dummy run of the King Island book. I'm very, very fortunate. My youngest daughter is a qualified graphic designer, and she actually designed my last two books. And I've got a good publisher. Like, I've used Brolly Books for all my three books. They're a university press publication company, and the lady there, she's just wonderful. And, you know, she organises, I mean, the printing side of business is woeful. You know, I've had to get them done in China because, you know, you want to get them out there and you want people to buy them. So you don't want them to cost too much. And sadly, like, you know, as my daughter says to me, there's some beautiful printers here in Australia, but, you know, are people going to pay for it? You know, this is the thing. You want to get your work out there. And there's a fine balance. It's like a lot of things. If people are willing to pay the money for a fine art print that's archival and last a couple of 100 years, but a lot won't. And it's like books, you know. I did the best I could for the money. I even had every page lacquered and things like that. And that was to ensure that the book would, you know, they're stitch bound. You know, I did what I could, but in the end, I had to go to China to get them printed.
And what sort of print runs were you doing, just out of interest, size-wise?
Well, the first book was 2,000 copies, and then the next two were 1,200.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, look, I don't know if I've just checked to see if I don't think we've had many questions. We've got some fantastic comments just complimenting your presentation, Ian. So thanks so much for I don't know if you're going to get much more of a detailed account of Norfolk, maybe if we have Zach on one day as well, but absolutely, after so many visits, you definitely know the place like the back of the hand, like you've said. So we really, really appreciate you sharing with us, and certainly like to have you back on at some stage to talk at least about King Island, and you've got so many other amazing experiences there that I'm sure you'd love to share with people. So,
well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Luke and Paul. Thank you both. I think the way you do this is wonderful. I'm certainly enjoying it as a professional photographer to go back and look at, you know, other photographers' work and how they view the world, and that there's so much rubbish going on in the world today, and there's some horrible things going on, and sharing landscape with each other and the beauty of this world on a spiritual plane is you can't describe it. Words fail you, really, and this is what makes our life better. It enriches our life and it gives some meaning to it. So,
well, it's funny,
I thoroughly enjoyed being.
It's the very word I felt it up tonight. I just feel enriched in so many ways. And I think it's a lot of it's the way you carry yourself and the reverence for the places you've been and the people you connect with. And I was thinking, geez, how many people in the world have you touched and moved and shaped in terms of their relationship with, you know, revisiting and reforging their relationship with this world we're in. And there wouldn't be many people that have touched as many as you. So, and it was a real pleasure to sort of get an insight into the way you carry yourself and the way you see and the way you relate in particular.
And also just the island itself. There's certainly a lot of like I never really would have considered the interior. I always thought it was more about seascapes than anything else. But I was certainly very wrong about that. It looks like there's some incredible places and just the trees and some of the you know farmland and all of that. Just look and the roads and the old fences and yes, quite.
I literally didn't scratch the surface tonight, Luke. I really didn't. You know, like you could go and show you the crops that they grow and other little things there. It's an amazing island. There's so much packed in there, It really,
and as Ian said, he's running workshops there and booked out this year, but available next year. So if you've been inspired, and probably no one better to show you around the island, so do consider that. I'm considering it myself after seeing that, Ian. It's so fantastic.
Me too.
So yeah, definitely. It's really gone up my bucket list just after seeing that. So yeah, thanks so much for your time. Also, just on next week, I think if you didn't catch earlier, next week's show is going to be about the International Landscape Photographer of the Year competition, which the results were only just announced, and we're very honoured to have Peter Eastway join us, along with who's the competition founder, along with Matt Palmer, who's a absolute legend and a brilliant judge and just all-round nice guy. So it should be an absolutely fantastic episode, talking about the results, and Peter can give us a bit of an insight into the competition itself as well. So that would be really fantastic. Same time next week. We'll have to leave it there for tonight. So thanks once again, Ian. Hopefully not the last time. And
absolute pleasure, Ian.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, indeed. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right, keep well, everyone.
Like and subscribe if you feel like you want to do that.
Please.
Catch you later, and see you soon. Bye.
Good night, Ian.